Hey, welcome to another Thursday Live here at the Association of PEMF Professionals headquarters. I am Dr. Jerry Dreesen, the Executive Director here at the AOPP. And I want to welcome those of you that are watching for the first time. Today we've got an interesting live stream we're going to be talking about, but what we call the lessons from history. So if we can let's see here. I think I want to go over there. There we go. So it's going to be all about kind of going through the ages with what's happening here in the world of AOPP. So with that, we'll get started. And the whole concept on today's live is basically PEMF story is a century-long roller coaster, equal parts genius, hype, and hard science. PEMF therapy evolved from ancient magnetic practices and advanced by Tesla and Einstein and gained scientific traction in the 1950s onward. And if you're a history buff, you know that as we started moving towards science, from just magnetic stones and the properties of magnetism, all the way, back into the pharaohs and Egypt and how it's kind of moved along. And then when we started getting some brilliant minds, but also the technologies, being able to harness electricity in a wire and all of those things, the science behind it really started evolving. Past wins and missteps in PEMF therapy, like early over-reliance on unproven magnetism or even breakthroughs by Tesla, still shape today's protocols and regulations. And successes paved the way for innovation and credibility, while past exaggerations led to stricter oversight. So ensuring PEMF devices are backed by science and safety standards. The trends reflect a broadening scope for PEMF, from traditional use in pain and bone health to cutting-edge applications in oncology and neurology. However, while promising, some applications, for example, cancer and depression, are still in early research stages, and they require further validation. So, as we say, always consult a healthcare professional before pursuing PEMF therapy if you've got some bad stuff going on. So, basic aches and pains and things like that. Those of you that are certified know that we've already discussed this and how you can do sessions on people without having to worry about medical advice. So let's talk about the pioneering 1920s. George Lakowski and the multi-wave oscillator. It was one of the first multi-frequency bioresonance devices aimed at tissue regeneration. Problem was there was no controlled data, and so there were sensational claims that were made, and hold on a second here. There were sensational claims that were made, and that, of course, led to the mainstream dismissal. The lesson is novel tech must pair innovation with rigorous evidence or risk being labeled quackery. And, like the medicine shows that would show up and drink this elixir and live forever. There was a lot of some crazy stuff going on back in the day. Once there started getting, towns and people and traveling salespeople and, setting up their wares, it led to a lot of hearsay and people banning products like these because the science wasn't there, and also the product themselves weren't regulated or designed to be consistent in their output and stuff. So it was the early science, the Robbie the Robot science, so to speak. And then during the Cold War, there was in the 1950s, there was some Soviet and Eastern Bloc research, and there was some early orthopedic and soft tissue studies as far as magnetoelectric stimulators that were in the hospitals. But again, The findings stayed behind the Iron Curtain, so there was poor data sharing and variable qualities as far as the tools that were used to put it together. But again, the lesson that we learned from this is that transparency and peer review, that equals global credibility for faster adoption and also adaptation. But if back in those days too, we traveled at the speed of newspaper and traveled at the speed of TV. And if you didn't have a TV, you didn't get that. There was radio, of course. And again, that was always based on the knowledge of the person writing the article or doing the broadcast. Then we hit the space age, the era of Tang. As far as NASA and Bassett's bone growth work. And there was a lot of stuff that was done during this time. But it some of the main things that it did is that it proved pulse EMF, and it accelerated non-union fracture healing, which is one of the the big eye-opening things. It's like, wow, this is working. Why is it working? And of course, when they figured that out, then they got the FDA clearance in 1979. But of course, the media hype painted PEMF as a cure-all, and the marketing outpaced the clinician education. And so we've seen a lot of wildfire spreading of rumors of something being a cure-all or an end-all. DMSO back in the day was an amazing thing, but again, things got shut down because there wasn't any regulation, or in this case, the products were there, but there wasn't enough training going on for people to be able to say that yes, this is something we want to use. And so again, that shut things down. And again, this is before the internet, so it wasn't like you could, like now, log in, become certified, and learn things online. People had to go to places to learn things, and so that was often a problem too. But as far as the media hype, that was definitely a problem there, because then you've got the sensationalism and things like that. So the lesson, of course, on this one was regulatory wins require parallel clinician training to maintain trust, but also just the science and the math behind things, and that's and the reproducibility and the double-blind studies and all of those things were needed to really make this product PEMF begin to sizzle. And then with that came what we called the gold rush of the 1990s, and there were home units and mail order, all kinds of things that build it, do it yourself. The first consumer PEMF mats, they hit the market. There was unsubstantiated weight loss, cancer cure ads, and that triggered FTC crackdowns because you cannot make those claims without doing the research. And there were some kind of getting back into the snake oil because there was bona fide PEMF results, but there were also charlatans passing off their own devices and based on the science saying, well, this device does the same thing, and then people realized that it wasn't, and that's when I call mom and dad. The FTC steps in and saying, okay, right now we're just going to lock it all down. We're going to say no to everything, and then we'll start adding things in based on the criteria that we have to create to say yes to this. And so there were some over-promising ads that came out, and of course that erodes the category credibility. So staying within the evidence is the lesson that we learned from that. And then, of course, the evidence building as far as the 2000s, the orthopedics, the pain and depression trials that happened. And so with this, we had lots of things going on. Again, I think one of the greatest breakthroughs too was how we gathered data and how we did the double-blind, studies, placebo tests. And so PEMF that was built correctly was coming out of this with lots of great results based on the criteria that was needed in order for it to be able to make these claims and to get passability from the controlling bodies that allowed, like FTC and FDA and things like that. But again, the problem was the diversification as far as who was getting it or what particular areas were being looked at as far as being able to make more claims. And so, as you know, on our website with our research page that we have, more and more research is being done on lots of different areas. So they've got the bone, bladder, depression, tissue, muscle. All of these things are happening more and more. Even with Dr. Bard's testing that he's done on live broadcasting of ultrasound to see vascularization increase during PEMF use. So, I mean, there's just some amazing things that are happening because we now have devices that can see through human tissue and animal tissue and actually view these things in real time versus, this is what it was like before and after. So we can only assume these things were happening. So standardization reporting as far as Gauss, the frequency, there's also Tesla, Tesla Gauss, but it's being able to regulate time, power, all of those things in a controlled system is what is going to make PEMF really shine now that we're in the 2020s. And then, of course, in the 2010s, there was a lot of wearables and wellness boom. Not only things that you're supposed to eat, but, how you're supposed to sleep. Lots of, we had the watches come out. We had the devices, the steps, the Oura ring. So there's all kinds of things that came out, but also with PEMF, there were lots of devices too. And there were compact coils that were in braces and sleep bands and pet collars. There was a lot of crowdfunding that happened with the flood of untested gadgets. There were some people had a little crystal that they plugged into the speaker of their phone, and that was supposed to generate PEMF. And there was like all kinds of, by the time they got shut down, they had already made their money. Those things were happening. But also, as far as device validation, having, getting a Gauss meter, those, to truly measure it, you have to be in a room and with no magnetic fields whatsoever. And then the device has to measure that. And that's a very expensive thing. So some people claim that they have a little handheld device. They just stick it on there and it measures the amount. To some point, there is some validity to that, but you're not going to get an actual reading. And those are the things that are needed in our field to be able to make these claims as far as the amount of Gauss coming out of it and, what's and the frequency of that. So there are a lot of companies that have variable frequencies and variable power, and that's only as good as the devices that do the measurements. So the lesson learned here, of course, is the device validation and how it was validated. And then now we're in, of course, the data-driven 2020s and, AI optimized waveforms and large-scale trials going on. And there's, algorithm-tailed pulses for concussion, neuropathy, multi-site trials with real-time dashboards like I was talking about. There is the blunder, of course, is people are like, yeah, but what about this EMF thing and the power lines and stuff? And it's like, no, this is a nanopulse. It's not EMF. And then educating people on the caustic cloud of EMF versus the frequency of PEMF, where it's in the healing, frequency. We're in an EMF right now with Earth's natural EMF going on. But there is a caustic EMF cloud that's man created. But again, if you can understand the difference between those and be able to articulate that to the people that are using it, those are the main things. And so having a clear, concise safety education must accompany every tech leap. Again, inside our education, we have all of that laid out for you so that you know what's going on and how, again, you can talk to your clients. You can educate the medical profession if you're going to go in and work with a naturopath or a chiropractor or a vet. You'll have all that information. So as far as the takeaways from today's talk, we have evidence before exuberance. So just make sure, as we make these leaps forward, that there is the data to back it up. Making unsubstantiated claims is the best way to hurt yourself with these things. So having this knowledge base, having access to it, there's nothing wrong with having it printed out and saying, well, here's what it is, versus like, I can't memorize the Krebs cycle, or I can't, memorize the 10 points that we need to make. So again, having handouts, having that education set up around or near you. So if you're doing a booth or something like that, people can actually read it and see it, and they go, oh my gosh, yeah, this is, science-based. And again, having transparent parameters. So reporting the different specs on a device helps fuel the replication and the regulatory success, and balanced messaging. So, having your claims and peer-to-peer review outcomes to help sustain trust. So I'll have patients that I'm working with, and they go, so this is such a weird thing. I go, yeah, did you know that it's FDA approved for bladder incontinence? And that, it's like, wow, okay, that means, people in the know have looked at it, and, it's gone through some sort of standardization and testing for these things to happen. So it helps bring that up into, more of that trust of what's going on. So the more of those things that you can learn, or again, have them, printed out on a handout or a brochure, or a did you know, those of you that are in social media, hey, did you know? And then talk about it, even though it might be 30 seconds. But if you can do, 20, 30 quick Instagram or TikTok videos on did you knows, those will gain traction. And those are all of the, the great things that can happen when you have a PEMF business as well. So to wrap it all up, PEMF's past is our playbook, and we want to borrow the breakthroughs and skip the blunders. But knowing what the blunders were, because people were like, yeah, but didn't, get shut down because of these things. And it's like, yeah, that was that group of people. They were using the wrong kind of wire, or too much power, or, they had all of these dials and gizmos and things were breaking down. It's like, now it's the companies that are making PEMF products now, just in the last 5 years, leaps and leaps ahead in technology from what it was 10 years ago. So that's the great thing that's going on as more and more of these things are getting learned and built. I look forward to where PEMF is going in the next 10 years, as far as ability to become, again, more mobile as we get better batteries that have less weight and more power. And again, being able to regulate the frequency coming out, getting better devices that can measure the Gauss output. So lots of great things that can happen for the future of PEMF. And again, I want to thank you for spending a few minutes with us today, learning about the history of PEMF. And you can do a deep dive if this rabbit hole wasn't deep enough for you. There's plenty of things to look at just by toggling or typing in the different titles that I was using for today's talk. You can also help us out, reach more people. We can send this video out into the atmosphere for more and more people to see. Just know and like and share it. with your friends, or just come in and click the like button, because as you know, that kicks in the algorithm so that it goes out there and we get to see more people. Those of you that are interested in becoming a member of the AOPP, again, we do certification courses based on humans, animals, large animals. We even have a red light therapy certification course too. If you're interested in becoming certified, that way you learn all about these things, but you can then, just like in the upper corner in our, up here in the corner of our broadcast, you can have one of these little member of AOPP on your website, and it'll link to your membership site on our website as far as PEMF AOPP website. And of course, our code of ethics, going to lay them out there for you, those of you who are interested in what we're all about. And the best way to help us out, of course, is to become a member and to, gain knowledge, get certified. And that way it'll help you again with your business, or if you're thinking about turning this into a business, or if you just want the information for yourself, so that way you can, work with friends and family with what you have. And if you have any questions or tips, throw them our way. info@pemfprofessionals.com. And again, I want to thank you for being with me today and learning about more on PEMF. And in the following weeks, we've got even more things laid out. Those of you that are interested in what we've got in the hopper, stay tuned, because we've got some great things coming up later on this summer, of course, into the fall. So with that, I want to thank you and enjoy the rest of your June. All right. Take care.